Ladybug ran the UV light that Mr. Cubdell had built into her yo-yo over Alec's body again, but it didn't make a difference. She'd done it 3 times now, and no fingerprints had shown up. She knew it was going to happen. When she'd been getting ready at the fashion house for the gala, she'd had the news playing on her tablet. Marinette had heard what he'd said, and before Alec could even finish talking, she knew it was already too late for him. Marinette admired him for speaking up against the control the court had on their city, but it just wasn't safe. He had already received his official calling card months ago, which was the warnings the Court of Butterflies sent out before their wings came to assassinate you. Alec had shown it to Ladybug, and she told him to stay quiet. But he hadn't. The alarm was raised when he didn't show up to Ada's gala, which he always attended, and Rena had found him at Eau de Paris not long after. The wings had killed people here before, but they'd never been stupid enough to leave the body. It was incompetence like this that made Marinette hope that one day they'd reveal the identity of at least one person on the court. These days, she wasn't sure who she could trust. And now Adrian was back. Ladybug shook her head, as if to erase that thought. She'd go home and cry about him later. Right now, Alec came first. He was a good man. He didn't deserve this. Rena came back into the room then, her suede boots hardly making a sound on the tile floor. Security cameras have all been wiped, she said, as she walked over to where Ladybug was knelt next to Alec's body. I expected so. They always were. Any fingerprints? Nope. Ladybug sighed and stood up. There's no evidence here. I'll let Rain Compris know. Rena Rouge clicked her tongue. Are you sure? I'm always sure. There's nothing. Ladybug couldn't see Rena's mouth through the grey half balaclava she wore, but she knew her best friend well enough to know that she was biting her lip. What is it? Ladybug asked, trying not to let any impatience show in her voice. She loved Alia dearly, and she knew she had a duty to Paris, but right now, she just wanted to be alone with a pint of ice cream. I know there probably is no evidence here. There never is. But what if there is this time, and we miss it because You can say his name, you know, Ladybug snapped, but she averted her gaze. Despite her saying that, she really didn't want to talk about him. You should know. I was monitoring the trackers in our jewellery before, just routine, to check they're still working. And, Adrian's put his back on. Marinette's eyes widened. The trackers only worked when they were against a heat signature, and since Adrian had left his behind, the signal had stopped showing up. Until now, apparently. Do you think this means he wants to rejoin the team? Rena asked, and Ladybug swallowed down the lump that formed in her throat. She knew she was still in love with Adrian, but that... She wasn't sure she could handle him being Cat Noir again. In fact, she wasn't sure she could handle any of this anymore. At 16, she thought she knew what she was getting herself into. She had been so wrong. Don't be bemused, it's just the news. Nadia Shamak here. Today, Parliament will begin the lengthy process of moving the capital of France due to the rising crime riots in Paris. The crime appears to be partially controlled by the Court of Butterflies, but various other gangs and triads are also making their mark on the city. We'll update you as the story develops. In other news, Paris finally sees some new developments, with Mayor Bourgeois hearing the proposals for the Sarugi Oxygen Tower at today's town planning meeting. With a groan, Tom reached for the remote and turned the television off. He couldn't take this anymore. He and Sabine had tried their best, as Lupin and Verity, but after what had happened to Emily, their heart wasn't in it to fight anymore. Or their bodies. They were too old. Fu had reached out, asking for help, but they couldn't give it to him. At least, not them directly. Tom got up from the sofa and stood next to his wife, who was standing chopping up vegetables. We have to ask her. Sabine put the knife down and glared at her husband. No, I won't put her in danger. She's in danger by just living in this city. She is only 16, Sabine hissed, hoping their daughter couldn't hear them. She was only a thin trapdoor away from them. Adrian is back and she is finally happy. We can't ask her to do this. We don't have a choice. I said no, Tom. The normally gentle baker rolled his eyes. Fu had reached out at the beginning of the week for help. The same week Marinette had gone back to school after summer, and had been delighted to see her childhood best friend in her class. Her being with Adrian again after over a decade of separation made her happy like nothing else did, and Sabine had tried to be happy for her too, but she couldn't be. Every day this week, Tom had pestered her about asking Marinette to go and talk to Fu, to see about the possibility of her taking over their mantle. You've been training her for this, Tom said. We both have. You put her in gymnastics classes as soon as she could walk, and I've been teaching her self-defense for years. That was before, Sabine said, trying not to shout. Marinette didn't need this, not when she was finally happy. I thought it was dangerous enough when we were gallivanting around being vigilantes, but now the Court of Butterflies exist. There is no way I am allowing her to do what we did when the city is 10 times more dangerous now. And we were 21 when we started. She is 16. She is a child. A child who will have no future in the city she loves if we don't at least give her a chance to do this. Sabine sighed. She hated to admit that her husband was right in this instance. They truly had been training Marinette up all this time to one day become a vigilante like they had been, and even though it was more dangerous than ever in Paris, Sabine knew her daughter would be good at it, and that she would also do anything to save the city she loved so dearly. Fine. Tom pressed a kiss to her cheek. I'll go and get her. She might say no. Sabine knew her daughter. Marinette wouldn't refuse. Tom thundered up the stairs to the attic and pushed open the trapdoor. His daughter was still wearing the clothes she wore to school, a pair of pink leggings and a white t-shirt. But instead of being sat at her desk doing her homework, she was on the floor, comfortably sitting in the splits, writing up notes from her tablet. She glanced up at him with a bright smile. For the past 12 years, she had hardly ever smiled like that. Even though she'd had very few memories of Adrian, he had been a constant in her life since the moment she was born. She had remembered enough to know she was sad without him, and the feeling had never gone away. Until this week. It was like Tom had finally got his daughter back. He just hoped this revelation wouldn't make him lose her all over again. Are you busy? Not really, but I'm having a study session tomorrow with Adrian. And Alia and Nino, she tacked on the end, hoping her dad would interpret the blush that made itself known on her cheeks when she said Adrian's name as excitement to hang out with her friends, and not something more. She managed to reconnect with Adrian a few years ago on social media, and while Marinette had developed feelings for him, she wasn't sure they were true feelings. How could they be when the only way they could talk was through text? But actually seeing him again all this week? Marinette thought she was going to die from how fast her heart would beat each time she saw him. She'd never felt anything like it before. Your mum and I need to talk to you about something. Right now, if that's okay? Marinette nodded, and after stretching, she followed her dad into the living room. Sabine was sat on the sofa, dinner abandoned for now, and on her knee was a small box. Marinette had never seen it before. What's up? She asked as she sat down beside her mum. Her dad hovered by the breakfast bar. Sabine took one of Marinette's hands in hers. Before we start, we want to let you know that it's okay to freak out, and cry, and scream, and say no. We'll understand. Marinette glanced between her parents. Are you splitting up? Sabine and Tom chuckled. No, honey. Sabine opened the box then, and from out of it, she took 2 masks. One was dark blue and black, lined with gold around the holes for the eyes, and the other was purple and pink and grey, gold polka dots shining in the lights of the living room. Do you know what these are? Marinette took a moment longer to stare before she processed it. These are masks. For Lupin and Verity. She looked back up at her parents, and now she had seen the masks. All the images she'd seen growing up of those 2 heroes were suddenly replaced with her loving parents. It had been them all along. Well, until 5 years ago, when Lupin and Verity suddenly disappeared, after Lupin badly hurt his ankle. Papa, Marinette whispered, your ankle. Tom smiled. All healed now, but I can't fight anymore. Neither can I, Sabine said. But someone needs to. You know the police are corrupt, Marinette finished for her. The bakery had been broken into last year, and absolutely nothing had been done. Someone stole all of the school's computers last term, and again, nothing had been done. Alex's mum had been murdered, and once again, nothing had been done. Yes, someone needs to protect the city because the police won't. The Court of Butterflies is bribing them. Marinette glanced between her parents again as police sirens blared outside the house. But what does this have to do with me? Our old mentor reached out, Tom said, still hovering nervously. He needs help. We can't give it. And you want me to do it? Marinette asked, filling in the blanks. Sabine took her daughter's hand again. You can say no. And you can think about it, Tom said. Marinette bit her lip. What will happen if I do it? Fu will train you up, Sabine said. We've already done some of it, like your gymnastics and the fighting you already know. You'll learn even more, like how to use weapons, pick locks, gain access to security camera feeds, medical training if you or your team are injured. My team? Tom nodded. You wouldn't do this alone. Perhaps you could ask your friends. People you trust. Marinette nodded, already imagining 3 certain people standing beside her. Adrian, Alia, and Nino. Maybe Adrian isn't such a good idea, honey, Sabine said with a nervous smile. After what had happened to Emily, she didn't trust that boy's father. Why not? Well, you've only really just become friends again. Give him some time to adjust. It must be hard enough going to a regular school after being homeschooled for so long. He'll be fine, Marinette said. He knows how to fence. He'll be amazing. I'll ask them all tomorrow. Then she got up from the sofa and bounced over to the stairs. So, you'll do it? Tom asked. He hadn't expected the conversation to go like that. I'm willing to try. Anything for Paris. We'll let Master Fu know then. Marinette narrowed her eyes. Fu? As in Wang Fu? As in my school's caretaker? Tom laughed nervously. The one and only. Marinette thankfully smiled. Tell him I'll meet him tomorrow at school. Then she disappeared back into her room and grabbed her phone. She needed to change the location of their study group tomorrow to the school rather than over at Nino's. Her 3 friends, despite the confusion they expressed last night in the group chat, were all standing on the pavement outside their high school at 9 in the morning, each with their school bags. "What do you think she's up to?" Nino asked. "Beats me," Alia said. "Does she usually do this?" Adrian asked. While he'd known Marinette the longest, due to the nature of their relationship being mostly online until 5 days ago, he really didn't know her at all in some respects. "Nope," Alia said. "Good morning," someone shouted, and the 3 of them turned to see Marinette ambling across the road from the bakery towards them. Adrian couldn't stop the smile from spreading across his face at the sight of her, or the way his heart was now going a mile a minute. He couldn't get over the fact he got to see her almost every day now. Hopefully, it stayed that way for a long time. "Girl, you do know that school is closed on Saturday, right?" Alia asked. Marinette just giggled and jogged up the steps. "I know. You'll see." They followed her and watched as she knocked on the closed doors. They opened just a crack, and she slipped inside. The 3 of them followed, but Adrian, Alia, and Nino stayed stood in the entrance. The courtyard didn't usually look like this. It was usually bustling with students, either standing around in groups or sitting on the benches, with a basketball game taking place once or twice a week. Now, on the right, there were silks hanging down from the roof overhang, as well as balance bars and weights stacked onto the mezzanine level to the school. Propped against the back wall of the school was a climbing frame, and to the left were dummies with targets attached to them, as well as a table filled with throwing knives and other weapons. Adrian knew his childhood best friend was a little odd, but he didn't expect whatever the hell this was. Marinette?" he asked, and he watched as she went to stand in the middle where a man was standing. It was Mr. Fu, the school's janitor, now in a red shirt and capris as opposed to the overalls he wore for work. "Come over," she said, and after exchanging a cautious glance, the other 3 teenagers did as she asked. "Dude, what the hell?" Nino asked, and Marinette just giggled. "You all know Master Fu," she said. "Master?" Adrian asked. "Is this some sort of BDSM thing?" Alia asked, and Marinette scowled at her best friend. "No. Master, please just explain." "I understand you are confused," he said, and Adrian gave him a nervous smile. He'd never heard the man talk until now, but he sounded kind and gentle, the complete opposite of his father. "But, if you are willing, and I hope you are, I would like to train the 4 of you up to be the city's heroes." Alia's eyes widened. No way. She'd read so many superhero books, but they didn't compare to the exploits of Lupin and Verity, which had been even grander when Hawkmoth and Azul Rhea had been on the team. "Yes, Wei Fu said, then looked at Marinette. "Is that correct?" She nodded with a smile before he continued. "You all know about the Court of Butterflies. They're controlling the crime in the city, and the police are not stopping them. I do not know if you can stop them either, but someone needs to protect Paris. I am too old, as are Lupin and Verity. We need new heroes. I was wondering if the 4 of you would be willing." "I've already agreed," Marinette said. "I have been training my whole life for this." "Count me in," Alia said, letting her school bag drop to the floor. "Whoa, wait, Alia," Nino said, pulling his girlfriend back. "This is mega dangerous. And it'll get more dangerous if we don't do something," Alia said. She knew her boyfriend was just being cautious, but she really wanted to do this. "We can fight. Together." Nino stared at her for a moment, but he turned back to Fu. "I'm in." "Adrian?" Marinette asked, but she frowned when she saw his face was turned to the ground and she went over to him. He didn't look up at her though, not even when she cupped his cheek. In theory, he didn't mind being a vigilante, and he didn't mind Marinette doing it either. But in practice, he knew he'd get hurt, which he didn't mind either. He'd given up modelling last year. His father would never know if he got a few scars here and there from fighting. But Marinette will get hurt too. He didn't know if he could take the girl he was falling in love with being harmed on a daily basis, especially not after what had happened to his mum. "Adrian, you don't have to do this, but please look at me." He did, and she immediately hugged him when she saw the tears in his eyes. "What's wrong?" she whispered against his chest. She was smaller than him now. How could he let her go out there and fight? "I don't want you to get hurt. Like my mum." Marinette rubbed her hands up and down his back. "I won't. You don't know that." She pulled away from him a little so she could see her face, but kept her arms around him for comfort. "Then join us. I'm not doing this without my buttercup." Adrian managed to smile and pulled Marinette back to him. He'd do this, to protect Paris and to protect his princess. Fu watched the 2 of them carefully. He'd been apprehensive after Tom's call last night when he let him know that Adrian Agreste was a potential for joining the new team. He wasn't sure it was the greatest idea, considering Fu and Gabriel had parted on terrible terms after what had happened to Emily. But Adrian seemed entirely different from his father. He was more like his mother, both in appearance and temperament. He would be a perfect fit. "Let's begin," he said. "Adrian, Nino, to the climbing wall. Marinette, could you please assist Alia on the silks?" Alia tutted. Her kinda wanted to use the throwing knives. Later, Marinette said, before she pulled her friend to the silks, and Adrian watched as she instructed Alia on what to do, before she climbed into them, clinging to the material and going all the way up to the roof with it, before tumbling back down, the fabric wrapped around her. Adrian felt his breath catch in his throat. Marinette was so beautiful. Adrian, Fu called for the third time, and the blonde boy finally turned to face his mentor. Sorry, Master, I was distracted. You can't afford to be out in the field. I know, I'm sorry. Fu handed them both a harness. You won't have these out in the field, but we'll use them for practice. Nino, up you go first. This continued for a month, with the 4 teenagers staying behind at school on weekdays to train, and going there on weekends too. It was a wonder they got their homework done in time, and the only reason Adrian was able to go was by convincing Natalie that he was doing extracurriculars. Which wasn't a lie, he technically was doing extra things at school, although they had little to do with his formal education. At the start of month 2, Fu brought in Mr. Cubdell to one of their training sessions. Dude, don't you work at the Louvre? Nino asked, and Mr. Cubdell smiled. The 4 teenagers already knew him from their numerous school trips there, as well as him being Alex's dad. Yes, I do, Nino, but I like to tinker on the side. I'll be making any of the technology you'll need, as well as undertaking your medical training. Of course, if any of you are seriously injured and require surgery, I will do that, but you should be able to handle any smaller injuries yourselves or take care of each other until I can arrive to help. And we all need to practice in different conditions. An incident may occur where it's dark or dangerous, so we all need to try and recreate those environments. They first practiced on CPR dummies and suture pads, with Marinette acing those with her sewing skills, and leaving her 3 teammates with sore fingers and thumbs. But when they'd all got it down, they moved to the environmental testing, and Marinette, Alia, Fu and Mr. Cubdell watched the feed from private cameras the caretaker had installed as Nino went to help a non-injured Adrian in the dark boiler room. The ambitious DJ located his best friend quickly, but instead of going for his neck to check his pulse, Nino slapped his hand on Adrian's forehead. Dude, I don't know how to tell you this, but you've got no pulse. You're dead. Master Fu groaned. They had a long way to go. They spent 2 more months learning how to fight, along with other espionage techniques, and once all 4 teenagers had mastered stitching up a wound in the dark, including Nino, they moved on to what in Marinette's opinion was the most important part of hero training, the outfit design. Alia paced back and forth in the quiet school courtyard, and Nino and Adrian sat on a bench, watching her. What's taking so long, she asked, not particularly to either of her friends. She knew they didn't have an answer for her, and they were also just as anxious to see their vigilante uniforms as she was. They'll be out any minute now, Adrian said, although he didn't know what he would be expecting to see. As close as he had become to Marinette over their training, she had kept tight-lipped about what she designed with Mr. Cubdell. He had no idea what they were about to see. Finally, the door to the boiler room opened. It was the team's base since the staff and students of DuPont never went down there, but instead of being invited to go down, Marinette, Fu and Mr. Cubdell came out, holding 4 boxes between them, each covered with a cloth. They placed them all on the ground and Alia, Nino and Adrian went over. This was it. Once they had their uniforms, they'd officially graduated from Master Fu's training program and would be allowed out to fight crime. This was the last moment before their lives changed forever. Who shall we do first? Mr. Cubdell asked. Nino, Master Fu said with a smile, and Mr. Cubdell removed the cloth from his box. So, everyone's outfit has been reinforced with Kevlar, which is the material used in bulletproof vests. While we haven't trained you with guns, because we don't want you to kill anyone, that doesn't mean others won't use them on you. The material is strong but lightweight. You should be able to move with ease, he explained as he lifted the green and brown outfit from out of the box and held it up by the shoulders. The neckline of the uniform was high. It would cover all of Nino's throat and the back of his neck too, advancing into the back of his hairline. At the top of his shoulders was a hood that Nino could wear up or down, and the shoulders and knees were reinforced with pads. These should allow you to barge through heavy doors, Fu said. Or past heavy people, Mr. Cubdell added. He handed the outfit to Nino. Go on. He took it, admiring the dark green colour, but narrowed his eyes at the odd design on the chest. Why does it have a turtle shell on it? Marinette smiled. Well, I thought it would be fun to assign us each an animal since I've already decided what my name will be. Ladybug. Alia and Nino both murdered, of course, having seen by now the necklace their friend constantly wore, but neither of them knew how she got it. Adrian did though, and the two shared a smile. So, my uniform is based on a ladybug, and Nino's is based on a turtle, Marinette said. She's been watching all of you carefully, Fu said. These outfits also show your role on the team. Nino, your job will mainly be defense, protection, either of your team or civilians. You are strong, and you know how to use your strength well. Do I get a weapon? Nino asked, still admiring his outfit. From out of the box, Mr. Cubdell took a shield with another turtle shell pattern on it. It wasn't huge, but it would fit nicely between the brown crisscross straps on the back of the uniform. This is a little heavy, the museum curator said, but that is by design. It's made entirely out of metal apart from where you hold it at the back. Hidden within the turtle pattern are wires. Anyone who touches it will get a nasty shock when it's turned on. The switch is underneath the handle. Who's next? Fu asked. Let's do Alia, Marinette said, lifting away another cloth as Nino put his costume down. The outfit in the box was orange and grey, and Marinette lifted it out for her best friend. I picked a fox for you. You've become quiet and sneaky when we've been training. You almost took me out the other week when we were sparring. Alia smiled. Only because you were staring at Adrian. Huh? The blonde boy asked. Nothing, Marinette chimed with a blush. Anyway, your role on the team will be more stealth, infiltrating buildings, taking out enemies before we see them. I designed your uniform so no clothing would flap around and create noise. Alia nodded in understanding as she took in the outfit. It was an orange pair of leggings, a stiff grey corset, and over-the-knee boots and long gloves. She wouldn't be the most protective for a fight, but with her role, she wasn't meant to get into one. The outfit would ensure silence, with the boots looking like they were made out of suede-lined Kevlar, as opposed to the big steel toe-cap boots that sat in her boyfriend's box. Marinette handed her the outfit, then took out what looked like an infinity scarf. This is your mask. The rest of us will have a mask that go around our eyes, but yours covers your nose, mouth, and neck. Inside is a speaker. You can use it to change your voice, or to throw your voice, if you want to make it seem like you're somewhere else. I also have these for you, Mr. Cubdell said, and from out of the box he took an orange and grey stick, along with a contact lens case. The lenses have been corrected so you don't need your glasses. I still need to get Nino's done, but yours also record a video feed, Alia. Anything you see will be fed back here, to your computer down in the boiler room, and it can be used for evidence, or just for surveillance purposes. And this, he said, holding up the stick, is a blowpipe. There are darts in the leg pouch of your uniform. Not poison darts, but it's a silent way of putting your enemy to sleep. And now for our second in command, Fu said. Adrian. The blonde boy smiled. After seeing Nino and Alia's uniforms, he couldn't wait to see his. Although his title... Are you sure I should be second in command? You are more than up to the task, Fu said with a smile. And I wouldn't want it to be anyone else, Kitty Cat, Marinette said, and Adrian narrowed his eyes. Why does she call him that? Oh, that was why. Mr. Cubdell was now holding the top part of Adrian's costume, which was a headband with two huge cat ears connected to earphones. Marinette based your outfit off a cat due to her excellent hearing, which is possibly due to all that piano playing, or from living in an abusive household and growing accustomed to listening to how violently his father slammed a door so Adrian could gauge what mood his dad was in. But he didn't say that. He just smiled and nodded. There are microphones in the cat ears that are extremely sensitive, just like a cat's hearing. They feed into the earphones. You should be able to hear a lot more than your teammates. Hear the danger before it arrives. And this is your outfit, Marinette said, holding it up. It was all black, and looked more like leather than Kevlar, which was aided by the presence of what appeared to be a leather jacket as part of his uniform. The zips and buttons were all gold in colour, and it was cinched together at the waist with a gold belt buckle. Mr. Cubdell undid the belt, and it unwound itself to 5 feet. Useful for tying people up. There are also these, Marinette said, and from the box she took out a pair of gloves which she handed to Adrian. They were the same material and colour as the rest of his outfits, but there were small claws on the end of each finger. The finger pads of all your gloves will help you with scaling walls, but Adrian's are different. The claws are tipped with diamonds. You can cut through almost anything with them, so be careful. Mr. Cubdell placed them back in the box and brought out a black mask with green lenses and a small baton. The lenses will allow you to see in the dark. Like a cat, Adrian muttered. The uniform was amazing, but he had to admit he was a little overwhelmed. What they had been working towards didn't seem real until now. This baton is your weapon, Mr. Cubdell said as he handed it to Adrian. It was heavy and silver, with a green paw on the barrel. If you press the paw pad, the baton will extend. Marinette said you can fence. It's not the same as a fencing saber, but it should be familiar to you. And it also extends quite far if you need it to, so you can get around Paris via the rooftops. And we thought it would be useful for you to take home, Marinette said. This way, when something happens, you're able to leave the house from your bedroom without your father knowing. Adrian smiled. Marinette was amazing. She truly thought of everything. And now me. Marinette removed the cloth on the final box and held up her uniform. It was all red and black, adorned with polka dots, but by the neckline it was tied like a cheongsam, with a glittering gold pattern breaking up the spots. In fact, the whole outfit had accents of gold in it, even the eyelets on the knee-high combat boots. Adrian glanced over at his box. There was plenty of gold on his outfit too, but none in Nino's or Alia's. His heartbeat quickened a little. Marinette had designed for them to match. I also have a yo-yo, she said. The wire is strong enough to hold the weight of 4 people, so rescuing anyone with it should be a breeze. All of you have pockets or a pouch on your uniform. Inside are inner communicators for talking with your team. The signal can sustain even if there are 3 miles between you. This is amazing, Alia said, still marvelling at it all. We're going to look incredible. Thank you, Marinette, and Mr. Cubdell too. One last thing, Master Fu said. He put his hand into the pocket of his capris and brought out 4 pieces of jewellery. You will need these. To others, they are just costume jewellery, but they are actually trackers, receptive to a heat signature. If you are taken, we will know where to find you, and they each have a button that will let me know if you require medical attention. Fu approached Nino first, and handed him a bracelet with a green turtle shell in the middle, for our protective turtle. Nino accepted the bracelet with a smile, and Fu moved to Alia, and he looped a pendant with a foxtail around her neck. For our stealth experts, he moved down the line to Adrian, and slid a gunmetal ring with emeralds embedded into it onto his right ring finger, for our second in command. Nino gasped. He proposed! Alia sighed. I swear to God, Nino. Master Fu just chuckled, used to the antics of these 4 teenagers by now, and turned to Marinette. And for our leader. He held out his hand, and left in the palm were a pair of red earrings with black polka dots. Are you sure you want me to be the leader? Marinette asked, glancing at Fu and her 3 teammates. Of course, Alia said. That's why we voted for you, dude. You're the best at strategy, Marinette, Adrian said, and keeping all of us in line. You're going to do amazing. Marinette found herself blushing a little. Thanks, Kitty. She finally accepted the earrings and slid them into place. So, I'm Ladybug. Did you decide on your names? I'm going to be Rena Rouge, Alia said. Babe, your outfit's orange, not red, Nino whispered, but his girlfriend just sent him a glare. Just pick a name, Nino. He hummed. What about Michelangelo? No, wait, Leonardo? Raphael? Adrian was the only one to laugh. They're already taken, Nino. What about Carapace? It's the name of a tortoise's shell. Carapace it is. What about you, man? Adrian looked over his uniform. There was only really one possibility. Cat Noir, he said, and Marinette smiled. His lady and her kitty cat. The perfect partnership. Did Adrian really want to rejoin the team? And if he did, would Marinette be okay with that? She wanted to say yes, but she knew the answer was no. She could barely handle seeing him at a party. How could she fight alongside him again? The only way being on this vigilante team worked was with trust, and Adrian had completely and utterly destroyed that the day he left. And while it could be mended, there was nothing stopping him from leaving again. Yes, she loved him, and yes, she wanted nothing more than to just run into his arms when she saw him at Montparnasse Tower. She still loved him, and he still loved her. But Marinette couldn't pretend the last 3 years hadn't happened. She had to protect her heart. She couldn't get hurt like that again. He's not rejoining, Ladybug said as she left the water treatment room, and Rena Rouge followed her out. Come on, you can consider it a bit longer. Ladybug turned around and glared at her best friend. I said no. He left. Take his fingerprint off the lock to HQ. He's not welcome. Please, don't do this, Marinette. Her glare deepened. I'm in charge. And it's Ladybug.